Welcome to a new edition of Spooky News from Spooky Ventures. This is the first Spooky News show of 2024 and is January 19th. Before I get to the news items, there are a couple announcements I should make. First, all things Spooky Ventures, and especially this YouTube channel, are supposed to be interactive. So please, interact. You can do that by subscribing to this channel. You can also do it by liking our videos, sharing our videos, and commenting. If you know of someone we should interview, please let us know. If there is news you think I should talk about in a future Spooky News episode, let me know that too. Next up, if you want more information about anything I talk about here, there are a couple ways you can get that. First, you can stick around until that glorious moment when I'm done talking. That's because I put all the source URLs and more information links on title cards at the end of the video. Alternately, you can look at the full description of this video here on YouTube because they are also all listed there. With that out of the way, let's get to the news. First, we'll look at a piece of shopping news. Do you collect action figures? If so, you might be interested in a new set of action figures from NECA. Even if you don't collect action figures but are just into retro Halloween stuff, you might want to check these out. That's because they are releasing a set of 5 action figures commemorating the old Ben Cooper Halloween costumes. Each action figure is 6 inches tall and fully posable, and each comes with a trick-or-treat bag, vinyl costume, and mask. The 5 designs are the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Devil, Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, and a skeleton. I have to admit, those are very cool and very tempting. I might have to get them. Next, let's look at an unusual piece of book news. If you were thinking of children's books, I bet you wouldn't think of the Aliens franchise as a likely source of material. Well, that's just what is going to be hitting stores in July. Published by Little Golden Books, A is for Alien, an ABC book, uses characters from the 1979 film to help kids learn how to read. From books, we'll turn to movies, and with this first piece of news, we go from adult horror adapted for kids to kids stuff adapted to adult horror. The earliest version of Mickey Mouse, the one from Steamboat Willie, has officially entered the public domain. Within a couple days of that happening, there were 2 horror movies based on the character announced. The first is Mickey's Mousetrap, and a trailer for it showed up on January 1st. There is no release date yet for the film, at least as of the time that I'm writing this. The other movie, which will be coming from the director of a Grinch parody film called The Mean One, doesn't even have a title yet. Now mind you, I've heard that the copyright situation with Disney's main Mouse Man is not as cut and dried as some suspect, because the character is also protected under trademark registration. So we'll have to see how all this shakes out, but I'm hoping to see these 2 movies at some point. In another piece of news, a trailer and synopsis have recently dropped for a movie called Abigail. Coming from Universal, the film focuses on a group of kidnappers who grab the 12-year-old daughter of a mob boss. They are holding her for ransom, but that's not as easy a job as it seems, as apparently Abigail is no ordinary 12-year-old ballerina. The movie will be released in April, but you can see the trailer now. Sticking with movies, are you a fan of the original Omen film? Well, if so, a new movie coming out might be of interest to you. The first Omen is a prequel to that movie, and it's set for release in April. You can check out the first trailer, which recently dropped on YouTube now. From a prequel, let's look at a sequel. That sequel will be for the movie Smile, and quite a bit of news has been coming out about the project. They're looking at an October 18th release date for the film. We don't know anything about the storyline, but we do have some more information. First, Parker Finn is returning as the writer and director. We also know that Temple Hill will be the producer. And it's also been announced recently that Lucas Gage will join Naomi Scott as a co-star on the movie. I'm interested to see what they do with this one. Another sequel in the works is Megan 2.0. Obviously continuing the story of the android killer featured in Megan, the sequel is in the development stage. The film is planned for a January 2025 release. If you're a fan of the Legacy Monsterverse kaiju films, you are in luck. The latest installment, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, is now coming out 2 weeks earlier than was previously being reported. It will hit theaters on March 29th. Fans of 28 Days Later should be happy with some news that came out recently. That movie about a world living with a zombie-like virus destroying and crippling civilization came out in 2002. A sequel, 28 Weeks Later, came out 5 years later, but was made by a completely different team of filmmakers. Well, it appears the creative team behind the original movie, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, have a new sequel 28 years later in the works. Not only is that film being planned, but the idea is to turn it into a new trilogy of films. Boyle is set to direct at least the first one, and Garland will be writing all three. Both of them would also serve as producers on all three of the movies. Now let's move from sequels to remakes. Are you a fan of either version of The Blob? Personally, I prefer the Steve McQueen original from the 1950s, but both are very much worthwhile movies to watch. Well, Warner Brothers Discovery is working on another remake, and David Bruckner has signed on to write and direct the film. After that little foray away from sequels, I've got one more piece of sequel news for you. I saved it for later because it's both movie and television news. Are you a fan of the crazy magic that is Killer Clowns from Outer Space? I have to admit that I only saw this 1988 cult classic for the first time recently, but I absolutely fell in love with it. The original was the work of three siblings, Charles, Edward, and Stephen Chiodo. Now the three of them have an idea about how to continue the story. Rather than a movie, they're planning an 8-part miniseries that would run on one of the streaming services. Now, this is just in the early stages, but I really hope it happens. I'd love to see where they go with the premise. Now, in terms of another piece of news that really speaks to me, James Wan is looking to turn his attention to adapting H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu. Now, he's not looking to just do a movie, though. Instead, he has plans for both a movie and video game. I am always very, very clear that I'm a Lovecraft fanatic. I mean, my first book, The Strange Sound of Cthulhu, was all about music inspired by Lovecraft's writings. So, as you might imagine, I really hope this happens, although I'd be more interested in the film than the video game, but both would be worth checking out. For our last piece of news from the headlines this time, we have a more somber one. Actor David Soul passed away at the age of 80. Now, while he might be best known for his portrayal of Detective Ken Hutch Hutchinson in the hit 1970s cop show Starsky and Hutch, horror fans probably remember him for another role. That's because he played protagonist Ben Mears in the 1979 miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's Salem's Lot. Here's to his memory. We have his performances to enjoy in his absence. Now, while that's the end of our headline news coverage, I'll be looking at our events calendar for a few dates in a moment. In the meantime, just a reminder, you can find more information about the stories I talked about here in two places. First, just hang on until I'm done talking. It's coming soon, and you'll see all the source and more info URLs as title cards here. Otherwise, you can just check out the details of the section of this video because they are also listed there. Now, as to that event calendar, we keep a spooky calendar updated monthly at Spooky Ventures. You can find a link to the calendar at the main site, spookyventures.com. You can also find a sampling of our videos there, links to buy books from Tales of Wonder and Dread Publishing, and Spooky Ventures merchandise. You can get to the merch store directly by visiting cafepress.com/spookyventures. You'll find lots of cool designs and items there, including Keep It Spooky ones, and Spooky. It's not just a season; it's a lifestyle, not a season. But anyway, back to that calendar. If you scroll down the main page at spookyventures.com, you'll find the link at the bottom of that page. We post dates that should be of interest to fans of all things spooky there. This time around, you'll see that today, January 19th, is Edgar Allan Poe's birthday. And by the way, we have some Poe stuff at the Cafe Press store. A week from today, the 26th, sees the horror film The Seeding being released. Well, that's it for this time, but I'll see you again with another of these spooky news episodes in about a month, sometime mid-February. In the meantime, remember, spooky is a lifestyle, not a season, so always keep it spooky. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.